Just bump into the music.
Oh yeah, we're jamming, guys. Welcome to the Inner Grove, where we've been breaking down the alpha, the strategies, and theory crafting since the launch of DeFi Kingdoms. So tonight we've got Nine Dwarf, Raph, and Bob Nothing. Gentlemen, welcome to the stream.
Thanks for
having us. Glad to be here.
Heck yeah, you guys rock.
It's the ADFK Legends. I was listening to, I think it was your guys' stream with, I think Raph, it was you and Franz and I think Guy, the night where the Connex did that like quick tournament.
Yeah, that was wild.
And it sounded like I wasn't able to listen to the whole thing, but it sounded like there's like potentially like a Guild Wars tournament coming up.
That's probably going to be 2 tournaments away now. We're reconfiguring I should say I'm mentally reconfiguring what was in my head as a schedule, but so Guild Wars, I believe, and France, if he's listening, correct me if I'm wrong, that one's 2 tournaments away. We're in a regular style tournament next time.
I don't believe that's what they said.
Oh, so I was wrong. So I was right the first time?
Yeah, I believe France said they were planning, that was the announcement, that it was going to be Guild Wars style.
Okay.
For this middleweight one. January 23rd, I think.
Okay. Well, I could talk.
Gonna make me go out and buy some midweight level heroes because I want to participate. We'll get to some of that. So there were a couple, like the reason, well, obviously we just want to have you guys on because you guys are awesome and legends, but we do want to talk about some Fight Klub stuff. And Raph, you and I were going back and forth, same with you, Bob, in the Fight Klub Discord the other night, just talking about a couple different philosophies of like balancing and scaling and whatnot. But I did have a couple items I wanted to touch base on. One of which is DFK items and item prices. So specifically, Gaia's Tears has been in the spotlight recently, it seems. There's been, let me just share.
Sandwich just fudding the tears.
Yeah. I mean, I've been like accused of fudding tears, and
so did you guys remember way back? Tears were supposed to be like this huge deal, like in the very beginning. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah,
they were a huge
and they were so expensive.
They were expensive.
Like I think they got up to like
$10 a tier.
I think they got up to like $25 or something.
People have said like 140. I remember 26 kind of being the peak.
I didn't have a Gen 0 that time, so I was just like a fly on the wall at that moment in time. It
was wild, man. It was like people wanted to summon so badly, but nobody could.
Right. So look at airdrop tiers.
We have tiers from, oh geez, what is that? 0.3 of a penny. Currently now sitting at, yesterday or recently it was 2.5 cents. So that's, what is that? An 8x from the bottom over the course of 2 weeks. What are your guys' thoughts here? I obviously like put a whole Twitter thread out about it. So before I further elaborate on that, I'm curious, like, what are your guys' thoughts? Like, is this, is this something you stay away from because of how low the liquidity is? Or are you like, this could be a huge opportunity? What are you guys thinking?
Raph, I'll let you go first.
Okay, I'll go first then. I did not see your Twitter thread on this. I've been kind of just buying tiers as I need them. I think the fact that some items in the game, or that there's changes in values of the game, I think it kind of keeps things spicy. I personally don't mind it. I think it's going to be really interesting and going to get hot and heavy when the next series of eggs release. I mean, I think maybe to the point where it could become challenging for some users, and ultimately that'll just create, kind of layers of rarity, almost like real life rarity, with being able to collect some of these items, and that being like green egg pets, because tiers are so expensive. I guess I'm fairly agnostic at the end of the day. I am not in the market trading, so that's not what I try to do a little bit of that here and there before. I was not very good at it, not successful, so I'm staying away at this point. Trying to play the game from more of a hero's approach and building a community, and then working on things from a third party development or shilling third party development from that standpoint.
I hear you there. So I've been keeping an eye on some of them, and I think tiers are specifically interesting in the fact that they're used for summoning, and I think some of this boost is obviously related to the summoning events that we've had. Like I think this is the two most closely timed summoning events that there have been ever. So I think that's kind of feeding into this too, and then dark summoning now being there as well. So you have another whole set of heroes you can feed. I'm curious if people are buying them up also in preparation for launching the new eggs. Because like you said, you got to have a bunch of tiers for eggs. And I don't know, I'm sitting on 25 green eggs. So I'm going to need a pile of tiers for that. So I think that's huge for tiers. And I also, I kind of track runes and other things as well. I think it's kind of interesting. It looks to me like mokshas have been down, which I'm sort of surprised about. I don't know if there's just more heroes finding them now, perhaps. And then otherwise, I think obviously things like Swift Thistle hit hard recently, but now it's starting to cool. That one's interesting to me. I think a bunch of people went and summoned a pile of foragers, and then they're going to be summoned just in time for them to watch the price crash right back to where it was. So I'm not on the forager train, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I think that whole train was because there wasn't really a way to get Swift Thistle. Well, Sarandel was out, right? And so it was like as soon as it popped up, everyone was rushing over to farm Swift Thistle because Swift Thistle is used for Stampots, and Stampots has actually seen like a pretty big. I remember buying them. I think I had a tweet about it where it dipped like 24 cents, and I think I stocked up on like 800 Stampots.
Nice.
But it's back up to 44 cents. Yeah, I don't know, Bob.
On the tiers
Bob,
for you
Big
guys.
Punch, you guys have any thoughts?
I got some thoughts.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, it's kind of twofold. I think there's going to be, like Grady has been talking about, a lot of demand for tiers with the eggs, both green eggs, and when we get level 10 profession quests, there's going to be a lot more, green or gray and blue eggs hatched. So there's going to be a bunch of demand. And I have no basis for this thought, but I think that the foraging and fishing bonuses from the eggs will probably be item drops. So we will get a lot more tiers that way, since all of our foragers and fishers and gardeners will have increased item drops based on that. I don't know what else they would do with that, but they haven't said that, but I think that would be the balancing mechanic for it to go up when we hatch eggs and then slowly drift down once the tier supply gets higher because people are pulling more.
Have they said how many tiers the eggs are gonna require? Do we have any idea?
Yeah,
what
it'll be the
that is?
same as the current ones.
Mhm.
Which
It's 200, isn't it?
200.
yeah,
Yep,
it's 200 per
200.
egg. So yeah, I mean, I have 84 green eggs, so it'll take 16,000 tiers, which is way more than I have right now. So honestly, I will probably
Whoa.
buy. Here's the thing: it's like, do you buy them to just hold them so that you don't have to get gouged on prices? That's my current mindset. Or do you buy them and then sell them on the pumps? And maybe it's all a moot point, because I think the biggest thing in my mind is it comes down to the fact that there is extremely low liquidity for item pools. So whether it's
It
a
might
pump
be
or
a
whether it's
ways
a
off,
dump,
too.
it's a very quick swing one way or the other usually.
I want to go back and listen to the AMA podcast with Workhorse, Bolin, and Hubert. I'm pretty sure Hubert said that level 10 profession quests are coming out after PvP. And then in other AMAs, they have said that green eggs are coming out after level 10 profession quests. And so if that's the case, I think we got a little bit of time, at least a month, probably 2 months.
I would be surprised by that.
It's surprised if
No, it sounded to me like they were a lot closer than that previously.
on level 10 profession quests.
Yes.
That's the vibe I've gotten. That's
And
kind of been,
they've always said that pets, their pet utility is going to be with the level 10 profession quests. So that's what I mean by the foraging and fishing bonuses from the pets will make more tiers.
I'm trying to find the my reply to Crypto Grady where I put a screenshot of like the current amount of eggs in existence. For whatever reason, the thread is like I can't really find it, but I don't want to like beat a dead horse here. I think this stuff is really interesting. I just think that because there's such low liquidity, it's hard to like. First of all, nobody's like spending $1,000 in degening. You spend $1,000 to buy tiers right now, and the price would like. I'd have to run it through a AMM simulator, but I'm pretty sure the price would go up like 30-40% just like that.
I don't
And
even know if
it's
you
the
could buy
same.
that
It's like
one.
as soon as it, yeah, it's as soon as the price goes up a bunch too, it's like you're just gonna have people that'll just pepper it and slowly sell it and bring it back down. It would be cool, I think, to see some more liquidity, and maybe there's ways for the team to do like snapshots for something based off of non-incentivized DFK tokens, like people who provide liquidity for those. Obviously we're not gonna like. I don't think it's a good idea to just be like handing out more Jade or power tokens for doing stuff like that. But I think there's things you could do that would be like incentivize providing liquidity for things.
Honestly,
like
my perspective is they've given us enough of everything to continue to play the game, like whether it's Malksha runes or Savash runes, like based on the number of heroes I have in questing, I've never had to go out and purchase more of those items. I've always acquired enough through questing, and I think it's going to be the same for tiers. So I guess right now, if you have 84 eggs and you need 16,000 tiers, that's obviously more than what you've been provided. But so I don't know. I just don't think that it's going to be much of an issue.
Yeah, I think in terms of strategy, it depends on how many heroes you have. If you have, 40 or 50 really premium heroes, you might need to be more judicious with what you do and just kind of stockpile to use them. Whereas if you have a stable of, 300 or 400, being auto quested or whatever, you have the versatility to
Yeah.
basically dump if a lot of people are summoning on the egg hatching event. You can sell into that liquidity, and then you'll just make it back passively and hatch your eggs slower, which is fine by me.
Yeah.
That's
I
kind of
agree.
where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I think that's where my mind's kind of at right now is there will and that we had a pump in all the materials as soon as eggs blue and gray egg hatching came out, and then it goes back to normal. Anybody that's sitting on boatloads of these items is like, oh, I'll cash out, get an extra 10, 20 jewel here by selling these items. So that's kind of where my mind is. But I do think there are opportunities for people. Like, I mean, if you're like, I only have $50, like that's where I'm sitting. Do I buy heroes? Maybe your play is you just ape into $50 of tiers and we see a pump when the green eggs come out and you double that to $100. I don't know, but I don't like nobody's doing that with $1,000 when the liquidity for the entire pool is like 5,000. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're onto it right there. It's just how do you get people to want to add liquidity? I mean, I had a really good pile of gold in there recently, and I just withdrew it because I was like, you know what? It's going to all convert to the other token, and I don't really want that to happen. I need gold. I have a feeling in the long run. So liquidity pools are okay, but they also kind of stink in the fact that what if I want that item,
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on from items. I think it is really interesting. I've been using this. There's this.
Stones are up a lot too. That's the other thing I've been looking at is stones for summoning. I think they're up a lot now, and they're going to go a lot further because of the event. Possibly.
Which ones? Regular, lesser, greater?
The lessers that you craft.
The ones you
So
craft.
those kind of go cyclically, where they go down in value when they're available to craft, and then they kind of creep up in value. But they've just been kind of up lately with the tiers because they cost like 50 tiers each.
Yeah, I mean anything that's craftable, I think fluctuates a ton with, as well. Not just only like the fact that the stone carver comes and goes, but then you've got the fact that it's driven by the underlying prices and like the items that go into it. I've just wanted to highlight this. I use this website when I'm pulling up items across chains. So like it's jsfiddle.net SZY45LNT/2. But you can essentially put in any token address and it'll give you, well, that obviously wasn't the right one, across the 3 chains, and it will give you the quantity. And I've done a lot of like comparing to like the explorers, and I think it's pretty accurate. So if anybody's interested, some people were like, hey, how much gold is out there? Which, by the way, I did look into it, and it's kind of scary how much gold is in liquidity versus the total supply. It's like 0.007%. But that doesn't account for the fact that like tons of gold gets burned just through in-game spend, and that's really hard to track. I don't have the resources to look that up right now, but anyways, we can move to the next item. One of the other things, Raph, we're going to talk about some Fight Klub stuff here, things like scaling abilities with your hero level and stats more, maybe. I think there's a lot of also just philosophical, how do you grapple and balance between these like pure competitive play and people who have assets that either they paid more for or just got lucky RNG, and how do you balance those two? So and then we have like the traits. I wanted to talk about the passive and active traits. So I think you said you wanted to maybe hop into some of the Fight Klub stuff first because the traits might be a better follow-up.
Yeah, I think so. I think what I'm kind of wrestling with is the game is continuing to reveal how deep and complex it is. And I think it's something that, as we'll get into it with the trait discussion, I'm sure as well, but there's going to be a lot of different ways that this can go. For the last couple months have been wrapped around the complexity of Fight Klub. And I think the future game could have, like 5x that complexity, 10x that complexity, just based on some of the initial information we're seeing. So one of the things that we're trying to work on with Fight Klub, and we started talking about it over in the Fight Klub Discord in the feedback section. So if you want to join this commentary, please, we'd love your feedback. And so thank you, Samich, for giving me some notes. I've been looking at how do we create abilities that scale, the attack power of abilities that scale over stat points is really what I want to value the most, because as we are painstakingly leveling up these heroes, we're spending crystals on how to level up these stat points. And rarity obviously impacts stat points a lot as well. I think stats ultimately should be and can be the ultimate value, like the lagging indicator of the value of a hero. And so the one that's easiest to monitor that we've all been aware of for a very long time is vitality. And then also with that is mana as well. And so when you think about these two stats of heroes, they're both growing at exponential rates. And it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around until you actually map it out onto. So I did it on Google Sheets, and I was looking at hero health growth over time, and it stacks on itself. And because of that, it creates a tricky dynamic that you can't have abilities that scale linearly. And it makes it so you have to have some fairly complex mechanisms in the game that allow you to try to keep pace. Otherwise, if your abilities hit for the same power that they're hitting today, or even linearly hit for the same power that they're hitting at level 1 at level 100, your turns or your battles are going to last 100 years once you get to level 100, because your health is just going to outpace your ability power so much. And so I've been trying to come up with ways of how do we create some scaling inside these abilities to try to do more damage as heroes increase in health. So that's my really kind of long, complex lead in. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting that you brought up is that you kind of like that the turn length of Fight Klub battles. And so we'll talk Fight Klub for a moment, and then we can bring it back to the main game. You like how Fight Klub battles at the higher level classes right now take longer and last longer. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, I really like that. I know that a lot of people like the baby weight, but and the reason I like the longer one is I feel like there's more opportunity for your skill and like game strategy to shine and like play out. Whereas I feel like one bad interrupt and a baby weight and it's like GG.
Yeah, it can be.
Yep.
And I think that, this game, both Fight Klub and the future Wisdom Labs game that's being developed right now, there's like 3 places that strategy can play a role in developing your team. And this is what I'm really excited about. This is what I love the most. There is leveling up your heroes, the strategy in that of how do you just optimize, how do you prepare your heroes to be the best? And then there's strategy in preparing your team. And it's all right, now how do I take these chads that I've leveled up and pair them together? And then there is the strategy in game, which is in between turns. How do you make new decisions based on what the opponent's doing? And right now, that's something that we're trying to layer into Fight Klub. And so, if this sounds like something you want to try and you haven't checked it out already, we are trying to keep the barriers of entry very low for Fight Klub, with all these different weight classes. And Bob can get into that a little later as something that he's had a heavy hand in helping us develop. And so, I guess one question that I would have for you is, what's your ideal game length and time? And then what do you think other people's ideal game length and time is? Because I actually think this is really important when we think about from a really macro perspective, like how do we make DeFi Kingdoms a popular game for the masses? Like what is going to keep their attention? And the average Joe player out there, how long are they willing to invest in the time to play a game, to do battling? Because I think ultimately battling is going to be this spending mechanism that powers the utility of the token, that increases its price, which we all want.
Oof, that's a great point. I love your concept of time. It kind of goes back to some of our college days playing Smash Bros. Like, oh, we got 10 minutes between classes. Let's go play a match real quick, a three stock match. And it's like you just had time for it, so you'd squeeze in extra games when you could because it was it fit in that nice 10-minute window. So I think in my mind, the sub 10-minute is huge. Beyond that, I don't know that I have much preference.
So then you have to find a tricky balance between, having your abilities get more powerful as all the heroes are leveling up, and then also, not having them be 1-for-1. So you're ending up with a baby weight style tournament, which I get why that's not appealing to everyone. And so how do you find that balance? And I guess what are you guys looking for?
So I do think my two favorite weight classes right now are light heavyweight and heavyweight, which is generally you're dealing with like heroes in like level 10-ish range. And I will say some of like my tournament matches were really long, too long. Like I think we got round 26 and like all
Wow.
6 heroes were still alive in some of my matches.
Wow.
Part of
That's
that's
30
because
minutes right there.
yeah, because you're generally pushing the like 45 seconds because you're like trying to really decide. And a lot of that, I think a lot of it comes down to like the length of the game comes down to this problem you've raised, which is HP, the HP issue. And how do you balance that against what is currently the skills don't scale, right? Like level
Right.
1 archer's skill does the exact same as a level 20's archer's skills. The only thing that really changes is things like your auto attack damage, speed, and most importantly, your HP. So I would say, if like just as a general matter, I think a good length is probably sub 10 minutes. And yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. Like I think
Yeah.
a sub 10-minute match is ideal, and that's not possible really in the current iteration of in light heavyweight and heavyweight, because most people have a frontline tank that has 800 hit points, and it takes a while to chip them down.
Yeah. And then like the tricky part is actually it's like how do you actually scale your damage? Because the easy answer through door number 1 is do everything by percentage of HP. But then you go back to my whole rant about stats being important. If all abilities do a percentage of HP, then the stats of the hero, like, well, what do they mean? You know, the rest of the stats on the hero card. Then it's like, oh, well, I've been spending on might crystals for my warrior or dex crystals for my archer. It's like, well, okay, my mythic archer is now, no more powerful than the common archer that's over there. And so you kind of have to throw percentage of HP. I think percentage of HP can work for some abilities, but not all. And then the next thing that you could do is you could build an exponential scaling equation, which I tried to do for your stats based on your level growth. But you have to have the element of level growth as well as the element of stat growth. And that creates its own set of kind of conundrums and predicaments as well, because then it's like it's not really based on your stats. It's based on your stats and your level as the scaling mechanism. And if you got a Chad that's a level 12 that has had amazing dexterity level ups as an archer, gosh, you'd hope that he could compete with level 14s. Like you would just want that as a user. And so I think the direction that the game is going with Wisdom Labs, based lightly on some of my conversations with Hubert and on this, is that I think that they're going to have to layer into the skill tree having abilities that get stronger as the heroes progress through the skill tree. And so your abilities that are accessible to you at low levels in the skill tree, those are only going to do a smaller amount of damage. But as you increase up that skill tree, those are going to have to hit harder and hit heavier based on the skill points that you can unlock. But that takes a lot of critical balancing to make sure you get that right. Because with exponentials, like you can easily veer off the curve one way or another and have someone slapping way too hard at like level 15 or slapping not nearly hard enough. And I think it's going to be layering this into the complexity of all the skill names that we saw and all the status names that we saw. I think it's they got their work cut out for them. I'm excited, but they got their work cut out for them.
Yeah, this is a really complicated or complex problem that you're bringing up, and I do appreciate it, and I think you're absolutely on the right track. What I would say is, I guess if you look at Fight Klub, I haven't been around as long as you, but I got a pretty good gist of it when I arrived. It was kind of in the alpha stage where everybody just played the heroes they had and kind of just tried to match up. And what I tried to add was kind of the beta stage in development of a stopgap to what you're describing, which was the weight classes. It's kind of an inelegant solution to scaling, so that at this point we're low enough levels with like regular with what heroes we have. I see what you mean by once we get above level 20, something's going to need to be done, because some of these skills just aren't going to have text. Basically, like aim shot just isn't going to have text if we're all over at level 20. But at the point we're at now, the weight classes were designed to make it so that certain heroes are good at certain weight classes and not good in certain others, and that's kind of the fun in how different it is between, middleweight, where, your ninja Miasma's doing awesome stuff, and, the high levels, it probably doesn't matter. Low levels, it's not good enough, and other stuff is good. So it's kind of an inelegant solution to this problem. But as we, progress towards out of the beta stage into, production, this is, like you said, a very complicated kind of the next barrier. And it's a lot of development for Konix, and it's a lot of development for the people like yourself with these spreadsheets that are trying to balance it, because it's a big problem. I agree.
Yeah.
To solve.
I totally agree with what the Wanderer, I think, aka Corey, just said. And as I started to put it on a spreadsheet and try to map it out, I think this is where the conundrum of the exponential starts to slap you in the face, is that you can't have you have to have an exponential component that's outside of a static multiplier. And I can't figure out an elegant way to incorporate that into stats alone. And so I was using levels as the exponential component of this. And so if anyone wants to DM me and get access to these spreadsheets, happy to pour over the numbers with you. I think I may be overcomplicating it. Not maybe. Most likely I'm overcomplicating it for the problem right now, because we only go up to level 20. And that's what it's going to be for the near future. And so I'm trying to like engineer a solution to the problem at level 60 or level 80 or level 100, because that's when it's really going to hit us. And so, hopefully we could maybe solve it creatively as we go along.
So, I mean, I think there's a good thing to remember though, too, is, you're going to have, so in Fight Club, it's basically just the skills that have been defined per class, and they're static at the moment. And, we're talking about how we could fix that, but you have to also remember that there's the skill points in the game are going to be applied,
Exactly.
and they will rank up skills. So
and that's the component of the tree that I expect them to implement, where like
correct.
For Fight Club, it's like fireball level 1. In order for Fight Club to scale, you'd have to then develop fireball level 2 that you can only gain access when you get more skill points, like you're saying.
Yeah, if skills are the way, then you say that you have to have so many points of intelligence or so many points of wisdom, or a combination of the two, and then you automatically are at fireball level 2. And so you could have a low level hero that maybe got a couple good rolls, like you said. Maybe he was stone boosted. Maybe he's only like level 8, but maybe he's got the intelligence of a level 9 or 10. And so he's got that rank 2 even in middleweight, when he probably otherwise wouldn't, and then he becomes powerful. So I think you're gonna have to double involve stat points on Fight Club, because you don't have skill points to utilize to bail you out, more or less.
Yeah. And one thing that I think one of the directions you're going, Samich, and one of the hard things about accessibility to Fight Club at the middleweight and heavyweight tiers is that though the heroes at it's kind of like, if you think about your hero wallet, it's like an inverse normal curve. It's a barbell curve. And so you like your heroes that are really highly evolved and leveled up, and you like some of the heroes that you just got out of the summons or got out of the burn pit that have that transcendent ability that you're geared up and ready to go for. And I think some of these middleweight classes are hard to field. And so how do we, make sure that there's solutions that are developed to your favorite heroes as they evolve and progress? But, you might have a favorite hero that's level 16, 12, and 13. Well, that's kind of in this weird weight class no man's land. And so how do you get your favorite heroes to also be a part of who you want to bring to the battle, and then keep the combat fair and balanced? I think that's also an extremely tricky problem.
So this is the thing that I am harping on about over and over in the Discord, and I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing me complain about it, but I don't see my solution to that is remove the individual cap. So you don't have a cap that says nobody can be over, no single hero can be over level 9. You just say what cap do we want to place on the entire team, and then let somebody figure it out. It's like if they want to put a level 20, so let's say 30 is the hero cap, and they want to play a level 20 and 2 level 5s. Do you think there's a meaningful difference between that and 3 level 10s? And I'll just pause real quick and say I think the only meaningful difference is HP.
Yeah,
I think that's the
right
only.
now,
I
yep.
think that's the only issue that would cause.
You're right.
Is a
that
level
is,
16, like say, let's say what is a middleweight? What is the total? It's 18 level, 18
Mhm.
levels total, and no
Yep.
more than level 9 for a single
That's
hero.
right.
So like let's just go like super extreme. You have a level 16 hero and 2 level 1 heroes, and then let's take someone who just does an average of 3 level 6 heroes. So I think 3 level 6 heroes in that scenario would have a very hard time chunking down
Yeah,
my knight if he was level 16.
it's an elephant-sized problem, unfortunately. It's just one, but it is that is the problem.
Outside of HP though, you guys have mentioned like, well, we're trying to like mitigate stats, and like somebody who just has a really good mythic hero who's rolled really well, and I feel like it's hard to
I
separate
don't
that.
want to mitigate stats. I
Right.
don't want to.
Okay, I got the impression that we were trying to mitigate that because like a level
I apologize
16
for
might
that.
have gotten like really great rolls and he's a mythic, and someone just paid a lot of money to get greater
I
crystals
think
on everything.
I think we want to incorporate and honor that. I think that is the spirit of this being a crypto pay-to-play game. Is those? I think stats are they should be king. They should
Well,
be what's held most sacred.
I do want to mitigate stats, and I'm not sure that's the right word for it, but I think you have a choice when you're deciding, these caps. These aren't, you could make an arbitrary number of 10 max, level 30, and I believe that would just, gamers are going to game the system if you give them a system, and people are going to use their highest rarity heroes in inflection points of level 5, level 10, level 15 if you let them. So mitigate, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but I guess it is, because it's going to be a part of the game regardless. I mean, you get a bunch of points for your mythic at level 1, you're going to get a bunch of points at level 5, he's going to do great. But I don't think it's going to lead to more games where the higher skill player wins if
I guess let me backtrack a little bit.
if you let gamers game the system more than is necessary.
Yeah, let me backtrack a little bit, and I think we'll find some common ground. Is I think it should be an important component that isn't disregarded. I want skill of gameplay to absolutely be included too. And so, if stats were equal, the higher skilled player wins. Even if stats are unbalanced, I want the higher skilled player to win. How do we develop a system for Fight Klub, and then how do Wisdom Labs, how do they develop a system so you incorporate both?
Yeah, here's the thing. I think that this is a like fundamental issue that like any true competitive game always runs into. Like I was thinking about this afternoon. Take any PvP game. Let's take a battle royale. Generally speaking, other than like war zones, when you used to be able to buy the DMR before everybody else leveled up to level 60, and then they just, auto fire from across the map, kill you. Like everyone's playing on fair grounds. Take any MOBA, everyone's playing on exact same page. The only difference is skins. There is literally nothing. We're dealing with a game right now where our assets have extremely different characteristics based off of how much you paid for it, based off how lucky you were on the summon, based off how lucky you were on the level ups, based off how much you wanted to pump in on the level ups with greater crystals. So how do you separate that? And so I was just racking my brain, like what other games kind of have this type of issues? Well, MMOs kind of have this, where you have whether it's real money auction houses or whatnot, where people can buy great gear, but I was trying to think of all the examples of like MMOs and stuff I've played. In every single circumstance, they normalize. And it doesn't matter what your gear is, it doesn't matter what your level is. They kind of just like throw you into like, everyone's a level 60, and here's the stats you get based off of your class. And now it's just skill. Like we just move on from there. So that's like and then they say, and then you go to the PvE element, and that's where you keep all of the benefits of your grinding, the money, extra money you paid, and the lucky RNG you got. So I think it's going to be super hard to balance. Even looking at the Berserker skill tree, seeing how Fight Klub's having to deal with this same issue. I don't know. Do you guys have thoughts? Like how do you
just read my mind, basically. Yeah. Those are my thoughts, basically, is what you said, is that I can't think of many examples except for MMOs. And what I would say is how MMOs do that. And I have somewhat limited experience. I played basically no life to game for a couple years and then quit. But in that game, you can really mitigate that by the cooperative aspect of it, the guilds, the raids, and stuff like that, where everybody has a role where if you're not the best of the best, if you're not in the PvP pit fighting against the other best of the best, you can fulfill a role on a team in a guild, not necessarily all with your character being the best, is that you are, a good player. And that's how it was, at least in the MMOs I played. And that's kind of what I'm most bullish for in the PvE aspect of this game that they're developing, although that might be a ways off. Because you're 100% right in reading my mind, that I think most of the competitive games basically do normalize, the characters. And that's because gamers / nerds are gonna, rage about pretty much everything, but there's different levels to raging. Like, people get mad when they lose and they call people lucky and stuff, but they get really, really, really mad when they are at a disadvantage based on somebody just having a fundamentally better, guy. If you're playing League of Legends and their starting character is just better than yours and they beat you, you're gonna just rage. That's just a human nature thing, and that's going to be an issue with DFK.
And I agree. I agree with you. And then I think I just put an explanation point on the issue. It's how do you merge that concept with a game that's a cryptocurrency game, that's a pay to play and pay to earn, and people are putting in money with that expectation right now. Like right now, people are putting in money with that expectation that the more money they spend, the higher value hero they're going to get in the long run. And I feel like those two issues kind of they collide.
Well, I mean, we'd all like to see this become like a huge esport deal, right? I mean, well, let's just look at sports in general. I mean, it's the same concept there. Think of like the NFL where you have a salary cap, right? That's kind of like, I'll call that our weight class, right? It still doesn't stop there from being pretty much dynasty after dynasty. One gets, like a salary cap didn't stop the Patriots from just getting off of a pretty gigantic run. I'll say it that way. And then you contrast that to baseball, right? Where there's some teams that never win in baseball and they never will win. So which sport are we trying to play? Do we want the people with money to always win, or are we playing the Yankees game, or are we more like in the NFL where there is a cap, but there's still going to be a dynasty every once in a while, and you're still going to have highly skilled people win. So I don't know. Those are huge markets, like some of the biggest markets in the world, and
I think whether we're trying or not, we're playing baseball instead of football, whether we want to or not. I would
agree with you.
I think it's going to be hard to separate that. Baby Punch, you played a lot of Hearthstone back in the day, and you could, as I understand it, you can buy cards. You can, how did they balance? I never played Hearthstone. But I know you played a bunch. How did they balance someone who's like, I'm coming in, I'm dropping $5,000, I'm buying OP cards. So how do they balance that to make it so that someone who's coming in free to play can competitively, or are they just going to get curb stomped? That's just how it was.
No, there's ways to It's been a good minute since I played Hearthstone, but from what I remember is you can grind through normal play without paying any money and acquire all the cards that came out in that set. Or you can on day one pay to have access to all the cards. So you can eventually get there, but you have to grind really like a long time to get access to all the cards. Or what all the streamers did, they just bought the packs, opened up all the games, or opened up all the cards and had, the whole inventory right there available. But I think you can grind and acquire everything, and that's how they did it in Hearthstone. But I get what you guys are saying. I mean, here's the thing: is this game is an economy, and those that got into it very, very early were in it for the money. So people put in money as an investment, and you guys have said this multiple times. You've got two heads. You've got the how do we balance playing to where everyone's on an equal playing field, and yet still give those people an advantage who are willing to invest into their lineup financially. It's if you remove one side, if you remove the financial side, the benefit of it, then it's I mean, that's DFK is an economy. Like that's why people are here, is to hopefully get an financial incentive. If you remove that aspect of it,
It's a Web 2 game.
Yeah, exactly. If they don't have the ability to make money in this, and whether they grind through their own time or grind through their own investment, if they can't get an advantage, then it's just a normal game. And I don't think that's what DFK is. I don't think it's a normal game. It's not a game that we're all used to trying to make it this normal even playing field. It's not that. This is an economy. This is an investment for most people. So it's a hard balance.
So I can speak to the parallels a lot in Magic the Gathering, having played it for the better part of 20 years. There are highly disparate power levels in individual cards from that game, obviously, and how they do it is through formats. And that was kind of my inspiration with the weight classes. And what people have found over the years is that really less is more. Like all of the highest competition, like all the world championships, to most, that's like the most stripped down Magic. So like you don't even play the really good cards. You play standard, which is the cheapest, most current set, and you play limited, which is like booster boxes that you buy for $3 from your local game store. And that's what the best players in the world, that's what they've decided is the best gauge and skill. So they use these formats and they strip down the game to where everybody is on the same footing, and they don't even use the cards that are really good except for like niche circumstances. Like they'll just do these special tournaments mostly for fun. All of the highly competitive, like high prize money stuff is stripped down to basically the lowest formats, which is really interesting. So that's how they deal with the different power levels in the cards in that way, is that the competitive stuff is stripped down and everything else is kind of fun.
So that would be
question on that
akin
though,
to
like
baby weight.
Yeah, like what incentive then do people have to go out and build these really epic decks? If everything is basic and ground level, like what incentive do people have to go acquire all the cards if all the focus is on the entry basic level gameplay? Like, do people really have an incentive to invest in the game
there's just a lot of different players. So not everybody wants to play the highest, competition level, and a lot of people just wants the old cool cards because they're really rare. And it's really not that different from this crypto aspect, this NFT aspect, is that, the really rare stuff is highly coveted, and just scarcity is what drives the value on it. So you're right, there isn't necessarily an incentive to do that, and a lot of the best players don't own the best cards. They just don't, because they don't want to spend $5,000 on a card they're going to play with once every other year.
I keep coming back to MMOs because they have this exact same issue. I can't think of an MMO where you can't go and like buy gear somewhere, or buy an account, or essentially pay to get great gear. But in all cases, they normalize. Destiny, Elder Scrolls Online, Final Fantasy 14. I never played WoW, but I'm pretty sure WoW does the same. So I feel like this dilemma is going to be like really exacerbated in Web3, and I've yet to see like a really competitive like Web3 game so far. So maybe there are other like Web3 games that people have like great examples of how this has been balanced well, but I think maybe the solution is that the most competitive play is normalized, and all those things that baby punchers are saying, well, why would you grade your stone, why would you grade your crystal, those cost real money, like you could have sold that for real dollars, like maybe those only impact PvE, and then PvE has its own set of benefits, monetary benefits in the Web3 world. I don't know the answer, but I don't think it's a simple answer, whatever it's going to be.
I'm glad you guys are so much better able to articulate this brainstorm that's been happening in my mind for the last couple weeks here of thinking. So yeah, thank you for bringing this, I don't know, predicament to life. I think this is we're staring down something unique, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, I think we need to keep in mind too that
yeah, go ahead.
Look at duels, right? I mean, it's clear to me that the team will take an iterative approach, and there'll be a cut 1, there'll be a cut 2, they'll make it better. Will it be perfect? No, but I'm pretty sure that their incentive to make this thing awesome is there. So, we might have to be a little patient. It might take them a couple iterations. Maybe a new thing comes out and it does get blown up, and then you got to get it. It'll get cut down. I think that's healthy though, and then that gives us, honestly, as streamers, something to talk about too. So I think it just drives the whole economy around and around. So I don't think there is a solution. There never will be. I think the solution is that it's living and breathing, and I think that's going to be the important part. Honestly, to me, is that keeps evolving over time as new content is added. Maybe amulets come out and they're like, oh man, now the PvP is all thrown out of whack because now I got to think about amulets, So it's going to happen over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. Honestly, one last comment is, I think, like, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Go back. I'll come back to my comment as soon as I figure it out.
The Wanderer has a comment here that while you're thinking about that, so like, just while we're on this topic of this dilemma of like, how do you really incentivize like pure competition versus just pay to win? And it's, the Wanderer is saying here, ultimately the question you need to answer is what will bring in the most players and keep them, and whatever the answer to that is what you need to do. And I think what that comes down to is what is the most fun? What is the most fun? When it comes to PvP, I think this is why we continue to see normalized equal playing fields in games. It's because it's more fun. It's just not very fun to play against someone who has 2 legs up on you because they have more money. It just doesn't feel good. It's never felt good. Diablo 2 PvP was like this, right? You go in and you play Diablo, like there was no normalizing in Diablo 2 PvP. So unless you were best in slot, you get murked. But there were still fun elements of it. And then you've got PvE, which is, I think, an entirely different crowd. And I think Rubito here said, when you get into MMOs, PvP, like the majority of the player base is there for PvE. Final Fantasy 14, for example, it's essentially just an awesome story. Like, don't tell me you're sitting there playing it because the mechanics are so fun. No, like it's not even like, and you get to PvP, it's like nothing really approaches the level of competitiveness, I feel like, that we see in battle royales and in MOBAs. Like those are just like, I think, the pinnacle of true gaming competition, because it is like the ultimate equal playing field. And then you've got PvE. So I guess I just keep coming back to this thought of like, they are going to struggle, I think, very hard to integrate a tokenomic system into PvP
Yeah.
without a heavy normalization, or the other alternative is a very, very good matchmaking system that helps to limit that. Oh, sorry, I
So,
feel like I've been
no,
talking
you're
a
good.
ton, but did you remember? what you were
Yeah.
gonna say?
So, I think honestly, and this is a terrible answer, but I think it's got to be they've got to invent it, because we're trying to compare how it should be with regular games, and the fact is you can't play this unless you invest into the game. You have to go buy a hero, and so they have this economy and tokens that regular Web 2, Steam games just don't have. So they have a element of investment and an economy that other games don't necessarily have to adapt to. And so I think they're going to have to come up with a new way to, make it fair yet incentivize investment into the economy. You can't. It's hard to do, one without one and not the other. Either you make it fun or you make it financial rewarding. Like, I think they have to like invent how they can marry the two, because if you make it fun, it's not going to be financially rewarding if there's no incentive to invest into an advantage. So, and maybe they can balance that out through grinding, but if they just eliminate the financial bump that you get from investing into the game, then we're going to see 22-cent Jewel probably indefinitely. But if the hope is for us to all get that up, there's got to be some. I guess I don't really know how to explain it, but I don't think they can like pattern it after what we know as games of like MMOs or MOBAs. I
Well,
think they've got to like reinvent it.
I like your concept of if you can't buy it, grind it. The question would be if a new player to your example earlier, Sam, came in with $50, how do they get to a Dread Knight? How much grinding do they have to do? And until there are millions of heroes in this game,
20,000 boars.
yeah, until there are millions of heroes in this game, like that's going to take them. I don't know if it's even possible
That
unless
was
you
a
happen to
callback
make.
to the South Park World of Warcraft episode.
Oh yeah, I love that
Anyone?
one. But I think that's what we're asking here is how do you get from $50 to Dread Knight? Or 3?
Yeah. You're muted, Samich.
I guess part of that is that does it matter? Like if you get to a Dread Knight in PvP, maybe it doesn't matter. In PvE, maybe it does. And so maybe there's just two completely different reward systems. I just don't. I think it's going to be hard to marry the two. I did think of one game. I bought a bunch of decks for this game called Synergy of Sarah. It's a blockchain trading card game, and what I think their attempt to normalize is this: you come in with a deck, both players come in with a deck, and 50% of your deck that you end up playing with has to be from the other person's deck. And so essentially, like what happens is the players come in and they create like a river that both like it just pulls the cards from each of their decks, and you have to build your deck with some of your own cards, but the majority being used. Like it's like a pool of both people's cards. So I guess if somebody has some super OP card, both players get to use it, and then figure out how to build the rest of their deck around those really strong cards that are shared by both parties.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, I don't know if I have a great comment for that, but I can say I'll circle back to you or I promised you in chat that this conversation, as nebulous as it was going to be, will tie back into the information that we've just been released. And so maybe the answer to the next question helps us decide where the game is going. And so I think we need to ask ourselves, transcendent abilities. So there's a lot of information here. There's details on what the abilities do, and then there's details on like the stats and keywords of like how the abilities are going to function. And that I haven't even been able to begin to wrap my mind around because I feel like it's really complex. I need to sit down, take notes, and go over this for a long time. But when you look at the transcendent abilities, I guess we could probably answer the conundrum to our question of, are they going to favor paying to get your items or you're getting your abilities, which would be like getting to transcendent in some ways, or grinding to get to transcendent. And so how powerful do we think the abilities are? They take a turn. And so I think that's something that's worth noting. From what we understand of the turn mechanics right now, you can use an active ability or you could use a skill that's a part of your skill tree. I think that right there is enough to say that they're trying to find a balance between those two worlds, right?
Yes. So one of the keywords they defined was action, a basic attack, use an ability, use a trait, use an item, or reposition. So that's basically going to be every hero's turn every round, which was really interesting. So basically, that's kind of your answer in terms of traits. Is it also seems like a channel was another one that made me interested in that some of the high powered abilities are going to take multiple turns to pull off. So you're going to have basically a mana will be kind of the choke point. I think mana will be the choke point for a lot of heroes. And on those heroes where they're not a wizard and they're not like spending their turns channeling
Also
this huge super move.
exponential.
Yes. But for those, I think the traits are going to be very good for those that are choked on mana, because otherwise they're doing a basic attack they don't really want to do, or they're drinking a mana potion every other turn in order to do their cool warrior move or whatever. So I think the active traits specifically are going to be really good on low mana heroes. And also most of those actives have a basic attack with them. So if you're wizard, who presumably sucks at basic attacks and is just, spending his time doing his cool abilities or spells, is probably not going to want something like Poison Blade or whatever, where it does a basic attack and it does another thing. Whereas a warrior probably would be using basic attack a lot of the times. So this is just all gravy. It's a good thing. Whereas a wizard would never be doing a basic attack. So I think it's going to be class dependent in a lot of ways in terms of mana.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, in the warrior skill tree, the warrior, and I'm making this up. I have no idea. This is just reckless speculation. The warrior might have some ability that's like strike 5 times, and then if you have poison blade, you have the opportunity to hit poison each of those 5 strikes. So I think you're spot on there, Bob.
Because, yeah, that was a point where it says, that 1.0 times basic. That was a new concept that I didn't really anticipate, is that you get an attack and you get an ability. So I think it will depend on how good your attack is how good these are. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Presumably some are...
I assume that'll be a lot like Fight Klub in the sense I kind of wish basic attack was defined, but I think a lot of that will be driven by like your stats.
And from some of what I've gleaned, I think basic attack will also be defined by your equipment.
Yeah.
Not
somebody mentioned.
I'm certain of that.
Somebody mentioned here in the chat, they just keep going further and further down this hole of where they're going to face these dilemmas of like pay to win. Pets impact combat. The quality of your hero impacts combat. equipment is going to impact combat. If equipment, I'm assuming it's all going to be NFTs. Very good ones are going to be more expensive on the market. So I'm honestly super excited to see how this all plays out, because it's going to have to be a bit of a disruptor in like typical PvP competitive environments, I think. Not to mention, it's like the end goal is we're not just doing it for fun, right? People are playing PvP and winning something, and that something
Right.
that they win will hypothetically be something worth value. So yeah, I don't know, but while we were talking about these active passive trades, it's one of the few things that you can start, I guess, theory crafting and planning around right now. And I asked people on Twitter, I said, how important do you think this is? Workhorse just liked it. This is what people said. So 19% of people, there's only 53 votes, so it's not a very big sample size, said they think these active and passive trades will be nominal. 22%, so let's just call it 40%, essentially said these won't be that big of a deal. Whereas the remaining 60% said, no, these are going to be way bigger than you think. I mean, more important
if
than
you
skill
look
tree,
at
I have a hard time.
Second Life,
believing that.
and if you look at Resurrection, like those seem pretty big.
Yeah.
I mean,
Resurrection, return target ally to life, 50% HP and exhausted. This one's essentially like a death trigger, same thing, but a passive trigger for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing more heroes to the battlefield. Like on a 3v3, like it's 3.5 v3.
Yeah, they're going to be good, but I like how they balanced them with the 50% and exhausted. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, look, for example, exhausted means can't take an action next turn.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless this guy's getting the guy with second life is getting murked in the early rounds, like you're talking about getting this guy potentially dying in the late rounds where everyone's getting pretty low, and then he comes back and he can't even do anything that turn. I think it's good, but it's definitely not like overpowered.
Depends on what 50% of that hero is.
Yeah, but I think there was all like I meant to say this earlier. Like I'm assuming you're talking about like 50% of a knight that has 1300 HP. That is
Right.
much different than 50% of a wizard that has 400 HP. But there's going to be ways to get around all that. And I also still don't think, going back to the Fight Klub example, and then I promise I'll just drop the individual caps. I still don't think a level 16 monster in a middleweight class ruins the game. There's ways around it. Like dragoons can chop 50% of that HP like that. And then, by the way, when that level 16 guy is dead, the guy's screwed because he decided to have 2 level 1s. But yeah, I think there's going to be, any good game will have all sorts of ways to like counter most strategies. So there's ways to be competitive even if somebody has exalted second life.
I like that concept. I think the problem with it is if you don't know ahead of time and you can't build a counter, and like say he's got a level 16 and a bunch of 8s and some level 1s, like, well, do I put my goons in or do I run what?
That's why you have sideboards. That's why you have sideboards, and you have to announce your team lineup in tournaments. So like the truest competitive play, you have to announce what your lineup is, and you have your sideboard. And the intent of sideboards is to like cover all the you're going into turn, you'd be like, ugh, Samage is running with his level 16 knight and 2 level 1s, and so and so's running with like an optimized 9/7 4 build. And I think the sideboard helps solve that.
I agree. I just think we kind of already have that concept, specifically in the middleweight. There's 2 pretty distinct strategies you can use. Is that you can consolidate your power into 3 heroes of like a 6/6/6, 7/6/5, 8/5/5, or you can do like your take your daughter to work day type of build where it's like 8, 9, 1. So you just have this one little dork out there trying to just land a life tap or a battle cry or something like that. So I think we already have that aspect, and like Fran said, he was running it by me a couple of days ago that he thought that it was already kind of too polarized in terms of what you could do. And I disagreed. But I don't think it needs to go the other way. I don't think it needs to be more polarized personally. And I don't necessarily know that your 16-1-1 team would be amazing or really bad. I'm guessing amazing because I listened to your podcast about dark summoning with greater stones and using greater crystals all the way up to embarrass everybody in the tavern of similar levels and classes in terms of dexterity. So I'm guessing it's going to be pretty good, but I don't necessarily know that. It can still get skewered.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I there's so much to balance and so many. I think it's got to be super hard as a team developing it too, because you can't open everything up to like some big decentralized poll and what does everybody think? It's like at a certain point the key decision makers got to make a decision and move forward, otherwise nothing will ever happen. Okay, anybody else? I don't know, any further thoughts as we close it up?
Actually, there's one ability that I thought was really interesting, or keyword, block. Not necessarily because of the block skill, because we don't know what that is, probably a night thing. But it says in there, if an attack has achieved a hit via an accuracy check. That sentence part is interesting to me, because to me, as someone who's played infinite hours of D&D/Pathfinder, a check is rolling a d20 and adding your modifier. So that seems to me, which we probably already knew, but this seems in my mind that a check is rolling a d20. It doesn't have to be a d20, it can be a d10, but some sort of randomization plus your modifier, which would be accuracy, which they said is dexterity. I don't know if it'll be class dependent. I kind of hope so. Otherwise, there's going to be some sad paladins that can't hit anything. But if there's going to be some sort of accuracy modifier as a check, to me, that means rolling a dice and adding your dice roll to your modifier, and that being a check against some other number, in which case this would be a hit. So against armor class or whatever. That seems like they're going in a D&D route to me, as someone who's played a lot of it. That rereading that, just the wording of it stuck out to me.
Very cool. That's I never would have caught that just reading through that.
Yeah, I kind of saw
cool.
that too. It was kind of like one of my favorite old Star Wars games, Knights of the Old Republic. You constantly had those rolls, and it's like that's exactly what this took me to. Is like, oh yeah,
you're visually hitting them on screen, but it was checking for accuracy.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, and that's another level of depth. And I know there was some discussions in the chat I could see about defense and evasion and damage reduction too. And we've not even scratched that surface of Fight Club at all. It's pure damage only at this point. Not only is it hard for Fight Club, but this has got like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 more facets to consider from the real game. So saddle up, everybody. It's going to get rough.
Yeah, I think to tail on that, I mean, that's kind of my takeaway from this is how intimidating and daunting the list is. And I certainly don't want to like classify my feelings as FUD by any stretch of the imagination, but seeing the depth of this was kind of like, whoa, like that's a lot of stuff that you have to figure out how to balance. Like could have started with, I was expecting a list of like effects of like 8 things or ability or, keywords, not this many.
So you're saying it's harder than duels?
This is daunting. This is I think about what it's going to take to balance this, and it's daunting.
Balancing
just
Fight Club,
brainstorming.
We have
Fight.
4. Yeah, we have 4. Yeah.
I also noticed that a lot of the concepts correspond to the potions we already have. So I think they're taking those into account, like the swiftness potion with first strike
Right.
and the toughness potion with those 2 skills. I forget what they're called, the advanced skill where you get a damage reduction buff for a couple turns. And like the potions kind of remove anti-blind and anti-poison. So that means to me, if you can use a potion against blindness or poison, but you can't use a potion against a bunch of other stuff, then that makes blind and poison worse. But at the same time, we also have these crystal veil materials that we do not have potions to use with yet. So they might bring out more potions to kind of fill out these skills. So like when you like exhaust or something like that, to basically fill it out so that it corresponds more with these traits, because I definitely saw a correlation with the potions. So I'll be watching for that too.
I think that's another way to level the playing field too, because if you say you want to play every single tournament and and it's a whale, right? They can go buy all the potions for every tournament. But if you don't want to do that and instead you want to grind your heroes, find all the materials, craft all the potions, and then participate in the next one, I think that's another way. I think potions could be a huge leveling field if done correctly, because everybody can get them if they quest for a while. So I think that's going to be huge.
And I when you just hearing this will be my last comment on this, and then anybody else who has anything, feel free to chime in. I kind of get the vibe with potions; they kind of serve the same. So I liken it to Dota 2. So Dota 2, most items imitate in some sense another hero's skills, and it's a way to adapt. Once you get in game and you're like, crap, like our lineup is not good, you can adapt through the use of items. And maybe even I'm just talking about with the potions here. The potions can help adapt. Like, well, I don't have like the skills that would help me negate some of these negative status effects, but I can use potions. And I think items will probably play into it a lot. Okay. Anybody else? I have this. I have like a personal like principle. I really try to keep my streams to like definitely less than an hour and a half, and we're approaching that. So, I apologize for my rambling.
Will
I don't
you guys
think anybody
just
else
get
has.
off our stream already?
No, this has definitely been my fault. I've been just like jabbering on and on, but
I feel like
I do
I've
wanna
been doing
open it
that
up.
all night.
I think it's been good conversation. Very productive.
Okay. Anything else, Neindorf? I feel like I'm bull on like doing like the closing remarks.
Yeah, I
Neindorf?
mean, I think I actually really like the comment I just saw here in the chat. What about the whole if this then that thing? I think that's gone now, right? As far as I know.
Yeah.
I believe so. That was the Final Fantasy 12 idea that got.
Yeah.
Right.
I think they're
Yeah,
going a
I just
different way.
wanted to make sure that we agree that's all gone, because otherwise all the stuff we've talked about doesn't really matter as much. So, but
Which, by the way, I think a gambit system would be so cool. I would love to program my AI teams in Fight Club, because the AI teams are kind of stupid.
Yeah,
and if
the
I
way
could
that-
tell my AI team, if this then do that, I feel like I could create a pretty awesome AI team. But anyways,
Nice.
sorry.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say, yeah, I think I love this depth, and like I'd mentioned earlier, I think it's the material that's going to keep us talking. It'll keep people playing and finding new combinations, and maybe people will slowly build up their heroes and go for those elite abilities or whatnot, and randomly hit one like we do. I mean, it's random chance, and
Yeah,
then
I see
if
you
they get one,
smiling over there, Raph.
they'll re-roll their heroes, and then they'll retool their team around that new hero. So I think, I love what we're all talking about. I think it's just going to make this game better and better.
Raph just hit big summon today, so he's
I
grinning over
hit a
there.
transcendent ability on Common Knight with 7 summons left. So pretty stoked.
What was the Mythic Squad price check on that?
Something like 15, 20K.
Woo.
Woo wee!
Yeah.
Let's go,
See,
man.
that's why you play DFK, because you have that financial incentive, the possibility of making money. It's like the lottery.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for having us on. A lot of fun. I feel like I rambled a lot as well. Excited, just the fact that Workhorse, that Ian from Wisdom Games is on, says a lot about the direction of where this is going. I think we got ourselves a really interesting game ahead of us over the next few months. I'm really excited to continue to unpack this, and like Neindorf was indicating, I mean, streamers will be in business for a long time. I mean, there is a lot of content here to keep going through again and again and again. So, yeah, that was 20K crystal, not USD, as someone commented. So, yeah, excited about this. Thanks for having us on.
No problem.
Thanks, guys. Bob, anything from you?
Thanks for
joining us, by
having
the
me
way.
as well. Annals of Gaia was one of the first things I printed out and read every word of the old Sandwich edition.
Dude, it's fun. It's kind of fun to go back and look at some of those things that were like the law of like how everything's gonna work back then.
Yeah, it's been
Cool,
a while,
man.
but thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining, guys. Everybody, have a great evening. Thanks for joining us.
Happy New Year
And
to everyone.
happy upcoming New Year's.
Love you guys. Woo, woo,
Thank you,
yeah.
guys.
See ya.
Bullish.
Can I get a Grady? Here's my Grady. Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
How was
Wake
that
up to Gen
imitation?
1, so I gotta tone it down.
All right, see you guys.